Good afternoon. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge television, radio, and podcast talk show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 2 p.m. as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. You can find us on television many different ways. That's Channel 182 on Charter Communications up close to Huntsville, Alabama. Another way you can find us is up on that television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And don't forget the podcast on thenewscasters.com. It's always so good to be with you any way that we possibly can. You can find us still on all of the social media sites there, and we definitely appreciate that opportunity as well. Continue sending email. It makes my day. Donna at donnasedge.com. Donna at donnasedge.com. I wanted to talk to you about something, and this is about old phones versus smartphones. Are we really better off? Let's talk about that. And the reason I'm saying that is I was involved in Cellular One, got to start my career with them back in the 80s. It's back when nobody had a cell phone, and people were saying, what, you're selling what? And so I sold to government and corporate accounts. So I didn't really have to talk to individuals and fight with them so much, but I did business owners. Okay. They would say, no, when I get off from work here, I'm done with this place. I don't want to speak to anybody. And I dare anybody to call me when I get home. Well, let me tell you something. I totally get it now. Are we really better off? Sometimes you have to wonder, right? You go on vacation and it's that you find yourself, you still got to have that cell phone. You're looking at it. It's on your back pocket. You pull it out and, a lot of us use excuses and say, well, we don't wear watches anymore. We'll see what time it is, and I have to keep my phone with me all the time because I could get weather alerts that I need to let you guys know about, and just various reasons I have to do that. So when we go on vacation, Phil will say, if you don't put up the phone, I'm going to throw it in the water. And I go, no, don't do that. I got to have the phone, okay? I got to have it after we get home. But our little 3-day weekend trips, we hardly ever take anything longer than that off we can't because we care for mother. And so we sometimes get a little bit of time off. And so Phil will say, well, we'll have it just for emergency reasons, but it stays in the car. We're not taking it with us. But let's just talk about that. Old phones versus smartphones. Are we really better off? We got those phones because we thought we'll be less stressed. We'll be able to get more things done. But it changed absolutely everything. It changed the family life, stress levels. It also, the business culture tremendously changed. I'd say that back in the old days, you kids that were born with like a iPod in your hand, you don't know what I'm talking about. There was a time, boys and girls, when you didn't have a cell phone glued to your side and you didn't use an iPad. You didn't use any of this stuff. But it just seems kind of strange, and I've noticed this also about attention spans and even how people think about relationships. All of that has changed because of a cell phone. So let's talk about the simpler communication versus constant availability. Now, with the analog phones, especially landlines, communication had natural limits, and that was pretty good, I think. Back in the day, we didn't know about that. So you'd call the house, not the person directly. So if someone just wasn't at home, you just kind of chalk it up to, well, they just simply missed the call. And that's all there was to it. Now, I will say this. After my grandmother passed away, my granddad wouldn't answer the phone because he said, women are constantly calling me and they're constantly wanting me to go out on dates with them. I loved only your grandmother. I do not want to date anybody else. So he wouldn't answer the phone. So I was worried about it one time because we lived like over an hour away from him. And I kept calling over and over and over again. They wouldn't have voicemail, and it was all new thing then anyway. And he didn't have caller ID. He didn't know what in the world that was. I don't think we even had caller ID back then. But anyway, I called and called and called, and he didn't answer. And so I tried to get family members. Nobody was available. Remember, we didn't have a phone or a pocket hanging around us all the time. And it was a different time then. Well, it scared me. So Brad and I got in a car and we went all the way to Oxford, Alabama to make sure my granddad was okay. Well, there he was sitting out on his porch, smoking a cigarette. And he said, "This is a surprise, Donnie." He called me Donnie. He wanted me to be a boy. But anyway, he said, "This is a surprise? If I'd known you were coming." And I said, "I didn't know I was coming. You weren't answering your phone." And he said, "Well, I don't want to answer the phone." He says, "Women are calling me all the time and I don't want to talk to them." So we had to establish something. So this is what we established. I said, "You can't let us worry to death about you all the time thinking something may have happened to you, Granddaddy. We love you too much." And I said, "So this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to tell the rest of the family, no one else is going to get this, okay?" So we told the rest of the family that what we'd do if we want to get in contact with Granddaddy and he would please answer the phone, we would just call and let it ring once, wait about a half a minute, and then call again. Well, that wound up being the thing that worked. So, you'd have to remember now about 30 seconds, because I promise you, he was looking at his stopwatch to see if it's been 30 seconds. And so that's what we established with him to get him to answer the phone. Again, no caller ID. You didn't know who in the world was calling you. And by the way, I think he still had the rotary dial phone. The rest of us were getting those punch button phones. Well, he was still doing rotary dial. So to tell you how far back he was. But nobody ever considered it rude because you weren't sitting there waiting on you to call. Well, now we've got that iPhone and people expect you to answer the phone. I mean, they're just being rude. Of course, I'm not, because I know that people have business they have to tend to. If they're running a business or if they're working with somebody else, please don't call anybody while they're at work, for goodness sakes. It's just not a good thing to do. It's not fair to the boss. But anyway, this is not rude. But now today, with smartphones, we got a whole new world, okay? We can read receipts off of it. You go buy something, there's the receipt right there. Typing bubbles let you know somebody is trying to send you a message. Maybe you just send somebody a message, "Have a good day." You can look down there and see those little typing bubbles. That means somebody's sending you a message right back. How about instant messaging? I still find myself, because I'm a mother and I'm a mother-in-law, and so if I say that I've sent a message to Brad and Larissa, sometimes I'm like, "Oh my God, something's wrong." No, they were just at work, for goodness sakes. I have to get a real thing on my life up here. They can't call me because they're at work. So some of you mothers are really bad at that. But instant messaging can help. Social media notifications, will let you know, that you've got a message, like somebody responded to your Facebook page if it's that necessary and you need to know that. All these things have created an explanation, an expectation also of constant availability. Many people now feel guilty if they don't answer quickly. I've caught myself doing that. I'm like, a customer may call it, and I'm recording shows, and I'll look, and it just drives me nuts because I'm going, "Oh my God, I wonder if everything is okay. Is the customer happy?" It's because customer service, that's what you're supposed to do, is care for your customers. Or, "Oh God, oh my goodness." And so as soon as I get off, I'm calling the customer, just to make sure everything is okay. Half the time, you know what it is? They butt dialed me and they didn't know that they were doing it. I don't know how many times that's happened. And there I was being anxious for nothing. Okay, because it's anxious. You just get this anxious feel when you see that you've missed a notification, or mentally you feel like you're on call all day long. We're not doctors. We don't have to be on call all day long. But it just creates this low-level stress that older generations often did not experience. And there was also more intentional conversation before we had texting. Nobody got anything the wrong way. And to give you a great example, I don't know how I did this, but one of my friends, I sent her a message, and it was no big deal. It was just a like, "Have a good day" or something. And so she sends me a message back and wanted to know what I was mad about. And I sent her a message back. "I don't know what you're talking about." And then I looked, did I accidentally put something? Because I've been known to do that, not reading. By the way, read your messages before you hit send. Just do that, especially if you're speaking those in, because sometimes my Southern English makes it a little difficult. And I have been known to accidentally put cuss words in there or say something extremely inappropriate that I did not mean to say. So I always look at them first and then send it on. But there was more intentional conversation then before texting. So she wants to know what I'm mad about. And I'm not knowing what in the world she's talking about. So I finally just called her. And I said, "What are you talking about? I'm not mad at you about anything." And she said, "You were yelling." And I started laughing. And I said, "Oh, it was a text. How was I yelling at you?" And she said, "You did all caps." I said, oh, I forgot that little rule. If you do all caps, that means you're yelling. And I said, it was an accident. I did not mean to put all caps up there. So, see, it's a lot of misunderstandings, come out of text. But people intended to talk longer too, by the way. Once they had you on the line, and also just a little bit more clearly, misunderstandings were often resolved by hearing tone of voice, not by some crazy text that you sent out there. Like, what if I'm just telling you, I have to look, because of my Southern English, I have to look at each text I do, especially if I speak it in, because I don't know how the person is going to take it. You might lose a client off of something that you did not mean for it to come out that way. Maybe you did, like yelling at them and they thought you were, and it wasn't. But sometimes just hearing the tone of somebody's voice makes it all completely plain. And us women are gifted at that. We're going to know. I can tell by the tone of somebody's voice whether they feel well or not. I just know. How many arguments happen through short text messages with no emotion attached? So this is another thing. If I think something might come out the wrong way, I put a smiley face up there. That's that little emotion thing, little emoji thing going on over there. And that way it won't come across harsh. It won't come across, it was just a joke. It was just like when somebody pulls out in front of you, or somebody's driving really, really slow, and you see that they're sending text messages. They're not paying attention to the road and they're kind of swerving, and you want to honk your horn at them, and you don't want to hit it like, just like set on the horn, but you just going to do this little beep, beep, kind of, just to kind of get their attention. And then when they look back, go, just kind of wave at them just a little bit. But sometimes things get so lost in the presentation because there's not emotion coming through, it's not hearing the voice. It's not hearing what you're saying. Okay, let's go into a commercial break, because this one's going to be a really big one. This analog wasn't always better, but it was supportive. So let's go ahead and cut into them before I get you all riled up about something else. So let's go into a break, and I promise we'll return in just a minute.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer
yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Lowe's knows that the projects you build in spring are the ones you can't wait to share. It's why we make sure you have our best deals with My Lowe's Rewards, and that you get help from people who've
Been there.
done that.
Try this.
This spring, we'll help you build something rewarding.
Hey, Stan. What's up? I made you something. Oh, thank you. And I got something for you. You grew these? Of course.
Lowe's knows how to help you spring.
Finding the right home isn't just about bedrooms and square footage. It's about comfort, security, and the feeling you get the moment you walk through the door. That's why so many families across Greenwood and the Lakelands area trust Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams. And I'll tell you from personal experience, Jenny was my realtor, and she truly cares about her clients. Jenny takes the time to listen, to understand what matters most, and to guide you every step of the way, whether you're buying your first home, upgrading, or ready to sell. Because this isn't just a transaction, it's your life. With local knowledge, personal care, and a commitment to getting it right, Jenny Ferguson makes the process simple and even enjoyable. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, now's the time to make your move. Call Jenny Ferguson with Keller Williams in Greenwood today and take the next step toward a place you'll truly love coming home to. Shine your style at Kiss My Glass right here in the Anderson Mall. There's a place where style meets sparkle. At Kiss My Glass, every piece is handcrafted, custom designed, and made to shine just like you. Owner Beth Gibson brings creativity to life with stunning custom tumblers, gifts, and one-of-a-kind pieces you won't find anywhere else. Look for the perfect gift or something uniquely you, from bold and glamorous to simple and elegant. There's something for every style, so stop by, get inspired, and leave with something unforgettable. Kiss My Glass inside the Anderson Mall, Anderson, South Carolina, where your sparkle begins. Be sure to check out Kiss My Glass on Facebook for updates and specials and gift ideas. Okay, we are back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Television, Radio, and Podcast Talk Show. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday. Now, I don't want you to get in trouble at work, okay? So don't watch me if you're at work. But you can always catch the show a little bit later on, always on Facebook.com/D Feazell. Just look and find me, and you'll see the latest shows. Okay, let's talk about privacy. Okay, I remember my grandparents, they lived in a small town, and they were on this party line. And so, which was always amazing to me that you'd be able to listen to other people's telephone conversation. Yeah, nothing was private back then. It's not private now either. But anyway, back then you had your party lines, and you would have to say, "I'm sorry, I got an emergency. Can I use the phone right now?" But there were ways you could say it without sending a text that would sound rude. So let's talk about analog wasn't always better. No, not always. But, at least it was on a smaller scale. So let's talk about analog systems could still be tapped or monitored, but the difference was scale. Okay, so an analog phone didn't track your location constantly. It didn't monitor browsing habits. Also, it didn't record app behavior, It didn't build advertising profiles about you. How many times have you just talked about something? That cell phone is apparently right by you, listening to every single thing you say. All of a sudden, you want to get a horse bridle for your horse, and all of a sudden you're being bombarded by advertisers about horse bridles. And only would you get at something like that if somehow the cell phone was listening to you and tracking that. Okay, so let's talk about this for just a minute. At least with an analog phone, today's digital phones can collect location history, shopping habits, because they're getting your receipts. Remember, you're paying, sometimes you're scanning it and with a Q code. And so, all that stuff's going into your phone, all that information about you. Search behavior, something, if you're like looking at nude people, on the internet, it tracks that. And so all of a sudden you're getting naked people all over the place. And maybe because you're browsing, so that's going to be something you're going to have a hard time explaining to your spouse if you're doing that. Okay. And then also, let's talk about search behavior we talked about, and then contact networks, voice data, and viewing habits. Now, many people feel psychologically exhausted knowing they're constantly connected and potentially observed by apps. Always. Advertisers, always. Algorithms, we've all talked about that. Employers or social media audiences. And in the analog era, your life was usually a little more local and less publicly visible, unless you had that party line my grandparents used to have. And then if you had an affair, shame on you. But anyway, somebody's going to hear you. Some nosy neighbor is going to hear that you're having an affair on those old analog phones, the party line phones, and it was out. You did not need Pony Express with some of these women that would get the stories out there. So there was privacy and there wasn't privacy, if you know what I mean. Now let's talk about the attention and how your attention span and how that has changed dramatically. So analog phones mainly did one thing, phone calls. Okay, and that was it. So digital phones actually became TVs, newspapers, shopping malls. They also became gaming systems, Cameras, don't forget that. I can't believe some of the things that people do, and they know that at any given time, a cell phone camera, and by the way, they're better than most of those old cameras were that were used in TV production back in the day. But those cameras are on there, so you can't get away from it. Social clubs, workstations, and entertainment feeds all inside one device. You all got that going on. The human brain was never really designed for nonstop stimulation. Okay, we got to have some rest. We got to get the brain resting. Okay, research now shows that many people struggle with shorter attention spans. I'll have to tell you, I do. Also, interrupted focus. How many times have you, okay, I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to get like a picture frame. Well, you go up there and then you're like, what was I up here for? Okay, that's interrupted focus, okay, because we've lived our lives on cell phones. I'm just telling you, if I didn't have this show, I would probably just have an analog phone and just be done with it. And I probably wouldn't even have a cell phone. A lot of sleep disruption is because we have a digital phone, increased anxiety from constant alerts and scrolling. So we've had like really rough weather in South Carolina the past few days, and it has been raining constantly, flooding. I'm talking like, thundering and lightning, all that stuff going on. And I had to keep it up. And also just in case, a child is abducted, I get those also. So just constantly bing, bing, bing. When I go into meetings, I don't even bring the phone in because they won't understand if I'm talking with them about advertising, and maybe being the sponsor of my show. They're not going to understand that, that was probably an alert telling me that we're going to have lightning, and even sometimes it'll say lightning alert, you got that going on, but constant alerts and constant scrolling. Now, before smartphones, what? We had waiting rooms and they were quiet. And some of you kids will never know those days. People observed the world before kids got bored and used imagination. Families often watch one TV together instead of everyone disappearing into separate screens. Everybody's saying, you got the TV blasting and you got the big screen too, by the way. Even with the big screen, it's like every single family member has their phone and they're watching something else on it. And I've caught myself doing that too, so no, I'm not perfect. Okay, boredom actually used to fuel creativity. You were sitting there and you didn't have anything. This is where artists were like blooming and blossoming. Books were being written. All these things were absolutely awesome because you could use your imagination. Let's talk about family dynamics. Boy, were they different back in those days. I'll have to tell you, I really didn't like mine growing up. But in the analog area, families often shared one phone. Yeah. Now I was never the teenager that wanted to be on the phone. I just never called people. I never did it, but my sister did. I mean, she was constantly on the phone. If you needed to use it for something, you would have to say, hello, can I interrupt you? I need to use the phone for a medical reason, because Brad was little and he was all boy. He was always falling down, like blood was all over the place. And so you just had to say, can I have the phone, please? Okay. So conversations happened in common areas, like our phone was in the kitchen and there was this really, really long cord. It didn't quite reach into my room, which I didn't carry anyway. I was never on the phone, but my sister had it stretched so far you could go outside, where she would just go outside and talk on. I mean, she was just like constantly on the phone. But for the most part, conversations happened in common areas. And parents generally knew more about who the children were talking to, by the way, and that was always good. Now, today, every family member may live inside a separate digital world. Even while sitting in the same room, social media has introduced comparison culture, comparing homes, marriages, vacations, appearances, careers, lifestyles, and I'm going to tell you, most of it's fake. Most of those people are nowhere near as happy as you think they are. They just want you to think they are. But that has contributed to increased anxiety and depression of many people, especially teenagers. And at the same time, digital phones did help families stay connected across long distances through video calls. This has been good. Group chats. You got a member of the family is in the military. Would you have ever dreamed somebody could be sitting in Iraq and a family member could talk to their family? Isn't that something? You can do photo sharing and instant updates about things. So the technology, both in connected and fragmented families at the same time. Now, work and life balance changed massively. I'm just telling you, analog life had more separation. Office, home, and weekends and vacations. Once people left work, they're often unreachable. Now, digital phones erased many of those boundaries. Now people often answer work emails at night, so they're still working. They take business calls during dinner. Ooh, that used to be a no-no. Work while they were on vacation, or they feel pressure to remain productive constantly. That's always reachable culture. That increased burnout for many industries. But digital technology also created freedom. It's not all bad. Okay, you could work remote. That's awesome. That's what I do. Online businesses, you can do that. You can have streaming careers. You can have podcasts. You can have independent media and flexible schedules. Someone like you with broadcasting and someone like me with broadcasting can reach audiences all over the world today in ways impossible during analog-only broadcasting. So it's been really good for my career. It really has. I find myself, I can get actually more done in a shorter amount of time, but I don't want to live with my phone all the time. Just like I said, if I decided to retire sometime, I'm probably going to get rid of the cell phone, or maybe Phil and I will just have one phone, where we could just have it in case we have an emergency. Let's talk about that human connection. And that became faster, but sometimes shallower. So analog communication often required effort, like you had to write letters. Okay, that was a must for you. The love letters, the guy was in the army, the military, and he wrote love letters back home. Sometimes he'd get a Dear John letter, which wasn't good. But the neat thing about that is you were actually making scheduled calls, okay? You were visiting in person. You were sitting together longer. Relationships developed more slowly. Digital communication made interaction easier and faster, sometimes more surface level. Okay, there are pictures of people on Facebook that doesn't look anything like them at all. And with AI, they've got it looking like a cartoon, which is fun. I mean, I've had cartoons too, but I'm talking about what may appear real may not be real. Quick reactions, emojis, you do the smiley face, or you do a frown if something is out there you don't like. You can send short text. Endless scrolling past people's lives. How many of y'all have checked on an old boyfriend or an old girlfriend just to see what they look like now after 50 years? Have any of y'all done that? Some people do. Many people now have more contacts. I've got like 5,000 friends. I promise you I don't know all 5,000, but because of the show and the people who follow me, I've got that relationship with people I don't even know. But we have fewer, deeper conversations. Now, at the same time, digital communications also helped isolated people find support groups, which is a good thing. You see, you get the good, you get the bad. Okay, it's helped to reconnect with old friends, learn new skills. Boy, have I loved it. I love YouTube for that. Like new things about gardening, new things about crafts and arts. And also build communities around shared interests. You can do that as well. Now, news and stress levels. This is in the analog era. You remember when news had set times? You remember it was like 6 o'clock news. And then we'd have like a 6:30 maybe. So we would have like a 6 o'clock local news and then a 6:30 world news. Usually we had a morning paper or an evening broadcast. Now it never stops. Phones constantly deliver breaking news. And half the time it's not even breaking news. It's just stuff they throw out there at you. You get outrage, you get arguments, you get emergencies, you get disasters, you get political conflict. Everybody's fighting with each other during election year. I don't even listen to any of that horse stuff. Do you? Most of us don't. And also just fear-driven content, about stuff. That nonstop exposure, it affects our nervous system. So that's why many people feel emotionally drained, because the brain never really gets a quiet period. And what many people actually miss, and what people don't miss, people do miss rotary phones or poor cell reception. They miss slower living and uninterrupted family time, stronger community. We all miss that. Less pressure. We miss more patience. We don't have that anymore. We miss our privacy, in a sense that life wasn't constantly demanding attention. Who cares what you went to Walmart and bought today? The healthiest approach today may not be fully analog or fully digital. It may be intentionally blending both, because using digital tools for convenience and opportunity while protecting real-world human connection and quiet time is a good thing. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, I got some bad stuff out there, but we also got some good stuff out there, right? For the digital world. Thank you again so much for watching, and you have an awesome, awesome rest of your day.